Hi there, thanks for tuning in. This is a video explaining the cloud computing characteristics. It is basically aimed at differentiating between the cloud environment and your on-premise environment. There are a lot of factors which have now sort of grayed out. Years back, there was clear differentiation between on-premise systems and cloud systems. Now it's sort of diluted. A lot of characteristics are common. There are still a good amount of distinct differentiations between the two environments. I'm going to explain through this mind map where the cloud computing stands and what are its different characteristics. As you can see, I have divided the map into different entities, different set of points. We'll first start with the what factor, then we'll cover the varying plans which are available for cloud systems, cloud services. We'll look at the measuring factor, we'll look at the broader access means, multi-tenancy, scalability, elasticness, and the cloud connect options. So let's look at what. Expand this thing. So what is cloud computing? It provides IT related services, that is prime. You are looking at cloud because you want to avail or use some kind of IT service which is available online. It is on internet. It's definitely on internet. So you will need not a private but a cloud network to access the cloud service. It is not a traditional setup. So if you want to differentiate between the on-premise and the cloud services, then to signify a cloud service, it definitely is not on premise. It will be on the internet. It needs internet to access. It will be somewhere out of your premise, out of your data center. It is not isolated. That means it is not within the corporate network. It is on the internet again. It can be accessed from either your corporate network or it can be accessed from anywhere. As long as you have access to the internet, you should be able to access it. Usually there would be a third party involved in providing the service. So the way it would work is that you subscribe to the service. The service will then be available on internet. Your users would connect to the service using the internet and all the data would be stored on the cloud. Whatever actions you perform would be on the cloud. So let's look at the different kinds of plans which are available for cloud services. There are multiple plans. Usually the most popular is subscription model. Subscription model basically means that you pay as you go. You would be charged a monthly value in terms of what you're using, what features you have access to, what capacity you have accessed, how much bandwidth you would have used on the cloud service, and definitely like what kind of resources you would have used for performing the actions on your part of the service. You can pick and choose features. Usually, and in most of the clouds, you would pick and choose features. There are certain clouds where it would be very specific, where you may not require the necessity to pick and choose feature. You might have a flat plan stating that, okay, use the service. You will be having X number of user access and you would be paying so much amount. As I mentioned before, monthly subscription is the most popular. There I have seen places where apart from the monthly subscription, the value changes based on what categorization you are in. Probably like you might have a personal, professional and enterprise plan. This is just a hypothetical example. It could be any other kind of plan. It depends on the service you're trying to connect with. So let's say you have a personal plan, which means that it would be available for home users. It would probably be free. Usually most of the services which are available in the cloud, they would not prefer charging the home users. They are kind of used for testing the features and functions of the service. It's an indirect way of doing it. You have volumes of users connecting from home and accessing your service. For instance, Dropbox is a wonderful service. It has got uh, free for home use, free for personal use option, and then there's a plan for corporate use where you need to pay, and you can decide on the space you need, the number of users you need, and based on that you can choose a plan. Now let's look at the other important factor. Cloud service is measurable. What it basically means is that there are certain factors which are being monitored on the cloud, based on which the charges would be applicable. For instance, if you take a cloud service with a flat subscription of, uh, as an example again, a flat rate of, let's say, $1,000 a month, and you've got around 20 users on it, and you're using the service, and then you realize that there's a lot of bandwidth utilization happening on the cloud, because these 20 users might be doing a lot of features or a lot of activities which were not accounted for in the first place. And you might have a criteria in your contract with the service stating that if the utilization of the bandwidth exceeds X number, then the charges would go up, and there would be a slab for different ratings, different charges which would be applicable as you increase your utilization. So in terms of measurable, there are a lot of factors which are being measured. It depends on the service again. A lot of services don't look at the minor utilization. They have a slab based on which they start charging. So the factors which are most common are like the resource utilization in terms of the space on the cloud, the CPU utilization, memory. Of course, memory would be flat, but you can, it depends on what kind of performance you're asking for. You can be charged extra if you're locking down the memory. Of course, the bandwidth also plays a role over there, and there would be features from the application side which would decide what kind of charges would come in. So the factors are measurable and distinctly available for you to select. Again, as I said, not all cloud services would be working in the same fashion. Different cloud services have different subscription plans, different models of charging. So you need to look at the how the charges are levied, how the charges are applied, and you need to look at what all options are available to you in different plans. And now the next characteristics, broader access means. Now, if you look at the points mentioned under broader access means, it basically looks at how you would be using the service, from what endpoint and using what means. So first one, I would say it's client platform independent. From experience, I know there are applications which require certain kind of client setup to be accessible to user. For instance, certain ERP systems would have a specific browser requirement, a specific version to be available, a certain version of Java to be deployed. The client should be Windows operating system. These kind of lockdowns are put in because the clients were designed for on-premise usage, and not all clients can be certified. So what happens is, like, on cloud, the available option is possible to be used in most of the platforms, most of the commonly used platforms. So it is client platform independent, It's of course device independent. So you might have a service like Office 365, which is accessible on iOS, it's accessible on Mac, it is accessible on Windows, it's even accessible on Linux. So it is device as well as client platform independent. It is accessible from anywhere. That means that you need not be in your corporate network to access the application available to you. Yes, there could be restrictions which are possible to be applied if the company wants to restrict access of the service from outside the network. It is possible they might have a tunnel, it is possible to set up a VPN access, but in general, the idea of going for a cloud service is to reduce the total cost of ownership. So idea is that the cloud service would be accessible from anywhere. You need not be in the corporate network to access the cloud service. You could be on the move, you could be in the market, you could be in the store, you could be at the airport. The cloud service would work as is on your device as it would in the corporate network. The last point here is the access anytime option. So your cloud service guarantees uptime. It is available 24/7. It would have few hours of downtime once a year, most probably once or twice a year, depending on the planned outage. But usually, unless there is a force majeure, some kind of unforeseen circumstances, the cloud service works 24/7. The people providing the cloud service, the organization will ensure that the service is available as per the terms and condition of the contract with the organization. Now, when I say anytime, it is possible some of these services would charge you on the availability of the instance. I have one case where we are hosting test databases on a cloud, and as long as the test database is up and running, the charges are levied as per the uptime. So usually what the organization would do is it will have the test environment running for office hours, and before the developers leave the office, the test instance are shut down. So they are usually down in the evening hours, they're usually down on the weekends, unless there's some work planned in advance. This reduces the overall cost of the hosting. It reduces the charges that are levied for having the databases on the cloud. This is just an example. There would be a lot of such services. Again, you need to look at the terms and conditions and how the charges are applied. Another unique characteristics, multi-tenancy. Now, multi-tenancy means that the resources are pooled and shared for a group of virtual environments. So let's say when you sign up for a service, you would have a private area on a data center having a farm of servers, which also would be giving services to a lot of other organizations. So it is possible that the CPU, the memory, the hard disk, which is available to you for your private data, is also being used by somebody else. That does not mean that the data is being shared. There's a clear demarcation. These are containers. One organization data is never shared with the other organization. The cloud service will ensure that the data remains private, but the resources, the hardware, is being shared to make the best use of the data center and available resources. This is the underlying factor which is very important for a cloud service. This is how organizations are able to give you a lower cost in the cloud. So when you compare hosting the service on-prem and taking a subscription model on cloud, multi-tenancy plays a very important role. Now you can go ahead and say that I need a completely managed private cloud with my own private servers. You can do that with one of the service providers, but then the cost would escalate. The cost would nearly be three times, four times, maybe five times of the subscription model on multi-tenancy. That said, multi-tenancy works everywhere. It doesn't impact. It has performed very well for most of the services. I've not personally seen any instances where performance is degraded. Yeah, there were cases in the past where I have seen few services not behaving properly. Maybe certain features went offline. These are more related to the updates which are going in. Probably there was a bad update or something. That is a very rare case. The service provider will ensure that things run as per expectation. Scalable. When I say scalable, it means that there is a choice available to increase certain resources available to your service. These are the most common: bandwidth, storage, and computing power. So I'll give you an example. There would be a possibility of a requirement that at the beginning of the month the load increases because you're performing some kind of summarization job, and that load requires more computing power. So you would have an agreement with the service provider, the cloud service provider, stating that the first week of the month I need additional computing power, so you can charge me accordingly. And the cloud service provider would give an option saying that okay, first week X amount of charge will be applicable, rest of the weeks Y amount of charge would be applicable. It again depends on the scalability factor. When you sign up, you need to ensure that you have a good amount of utilization resources available to you. And going forward, as the load increases, you can always negotiate with the cloud service providers and increase your utilization space. Elastic. Now this is somewhat similar to scalable, but elastic is both ways. So elastic basically means certain resources or certain features can be increased or decreased on the fly. This is like on-demand kind of a service. So it's on-demand self-service. It is also known as provisioning. So you have the liberty of logging in, going to a console and expanding certain features or utilization aspect of your cloud service. For example, if I go with ShareFile, I have a bandwidth utilization limit set for my monthly plan. Now by default, I can exceed that plan and continue utilizing more than that, and ShareFile would charge me based on my overall utilization. In certain services, I also have an option to lock down utilization so that I can prevent escalation of charges beyond a certain limit. So it's sort of elastic. I can increase or decrease what I'm using based on the business objective. That's what I discussed about increase, decrease resources. The last feature, Cloud Connect. There are options available to connect to the cloud, not only for carrying out the regular features, the regular process, but also for connecting the cloud service with other services you would have. It could be either on-premise service or it could be another cloud service which you want to interconnect with the identified cloud service and maybe share data or perform an activity. So you have web services, you have application programming interfaces, you have plugins. Now these are different kind of code, different kind of programs which are available, and you can make, for example, if you want to make a web to web call, web services are the most convenient way of sharing information or performing an action. APIs are mostly used if you want to call in an interface to upload or download data between two different environments. So we usually have API programs running between an ERP system and a cloud service to share information. And this is just an example. Plugins, something like what you have in browsers, it add-ons to the available features on the service. So it is possible that your cloud service has also got an environment where organizations can come in and design and develop plugins that give additional features on top of what is available. Now you can be charged for these additional plugins. You can subscribe and you can pay for these plugins also on a monthly basis. For example, I have one cloud service which allows me to perform online transactions. It could be a web store or something. Now I need the data to be transmitted back to my SQL server. So I need a backend tunnel which can allow me to pull data from the cloud service and then dump it onto my SQL server which is on-prem. I would use a plugin which would be available in the form of an app in the store, in the cloud store, if there is a cloud store connected with the service. I'll need to either subscribe to that plugin or I'll need to deploy it along with my cloud service provider and then set it up to connect to my on-premise database for transmitting data. It's just an example. All of these programs are aimed at giving you the option to perform activities between environments, between different environments. So to say, the cloud service is not locking you down. The cloud service is free to expand and be compatible with what all other services you have. So when you actually look out for a cloud service, you also need to look out for what all connectivities you need between your on-prem or between your other cloud services. So this sums up what information I have about cloud computing, the characteristics. I have not covered up the different models or the different environments which are available on cloud. I will take it up in a different video. This video was totally intended for explaining the cloud computing characteristics, and as I mentioned years back, these characteristics were pretty identifiable and they were related to cloud environments. Now these are sort of diluted because a lot of on-prem clouds have a lot of on-prem environments have been interconnected with cloud. You might have a hybrid environment. Now if you look inside your corporate environment and if you find a service which is available to you on a browser or as a desktop shortcut, you will be able to question about the attributes this service has, whether it's connecting to an internet server, whether it requires an internet to connect to the outside world, whether data is there in your corporate network or the data is lying outside on the internet. It gives you a fair idea about how to differentiate the legacy services which are there on-prem and the cloud services. Cloud computing is the future path. Most new organizations which I have come across have upfront gone with cloud services. The differentiation factors which I mentioned would be applicable where environments have been running for years and years and were used to having on-premise data centers and now would be interested in going for cloud services. So these factors are only meant to differentiate. These factors do not assist in identifying how good a cloud service is. That is dependent on the features, functions, and what you want to actually achieve from the service. So ensure that apart from these factors what I have mentioned, you look at the usability of the service. There are trial runs available. If you subscribe to a cloud service, you can go for a free usage period where it's sort of a trial run where you try out the different features and functions in full option mode and then take a call whether the service actually applies. Thanks a lot for being patient to watch this video. I hope this was useful.